false alarm. I thought that help was here. But it was my own reassurance bouncing round 100,000 times in my own ecosphere. If every time you speak you keep it off the record, consequently you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear. But that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere. Where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink 'em twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
You know, sir, I like you much better with my glasses off.
I guess I was born with the curse of foresight, cause I knew Joe was only gonna represent the war side. And that said, I just came to fight. You could keep the ore flight. Save the surprise and the gasp when the shadow of the fascists have cast is on your doorstep in the glow of your porch light. Save the surprise when the grid goes down and we go underground to lick wounds in the gloom of a torchlight. While up in the sky, a blimp glides by with a sign like New Year's 2022. Brought to you jointly by Pfizer and Coors Light. While the centrists observe from a comfortable courtside, right in the thick of the action behind a partition. We're in a morbid position, a plague of evictions, born a comorbid condition of the cancer of wealth. I fantasize that I cancel myself, hands on your head, throw your best laid plans in the well. There are no more answers, questions go back on the shelf. All Joe's donors, a quick show of hands. How many of you sub to the Lockheed Martin OnlyFans? How many are loyalist patrons for the Raytheon Patreon? Occupy Iraq and send $1 million off into the great beyond. Cool yourself with the safety on. True to yourself in as much as you dutifully spew out a mucus of QAnon. You can't convince me the capital wasn't surrendered with every intention of digging us deeper down into the treacherous webbing of censorship, ebbing your speech and dissension so you can't hold Biden accountable. Not in his mentions and not in the streets. Know to the end that Joe will defend the elite. Joe won't embarrass McConnell, but Joe's not embarrassed if all of your children are hungry and weak. Too hungry to speak. Too hungry to stand, they just lie at his feet. Joe is fresh out of empathy, fresh out of policy, but he'd love to know, what was your favorite ice cream flavor to eat? Back when you used to eat. I guess the road isn't rocky for people who thought we were free. They'll believe what they read and Joe's here to lull them to sleep. counting us down by the dozens, the culling of gullible sheep, led to the slaughter by media tyrants and government thieves. These are the leeches that stubbornly suck where there's nothing to bleed. These are the tumors that force us to crawl on our knees. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free.
I've been 27 since 33. What the hell does society want from me? I've been
They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss this on your own. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them, no, it's 'cause you are. It's 'cause you are.
They'll gladly stagnate a living wage, snap the chains, bury it. Labor slaves in rusty cages dragged behind a chariot.
Who are these people?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of INA News. I'm here with my co-host Collin.
Episode 20.
Episode 20. A whole 20. We're almost at that legal drinking age. We're almost there. But anything we need to go over before we start our show?
Well, I think just our usual mental check.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Pretty good. You know, I had to figure out how to hit F11 and so I can make things full screen. Which is which button? I thought I made a button. Whatever. But anyway, I have some new toys to play with on today's stream, Collin. Which I don't think I've shown you yet. You can see. Look at there. Whoop.
Oh, you can zoom in.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, and that should happen for stream 2 when we get there.
Nice.
But if people would like to share the stream right off the bat before we get started, that's always appreciated. Especially since we had to redo our streams. So I will be, looks like Indy Left is sharing stuff everywhere as well. But anyway, how are you doing, Collin? You doing okay? Hopefully you're doing okay.
Besides this cold or this tickle that has not gone away yet, which is kind of annoying. I think it's something in the room that's kind of affecting, you know, my throat or whatever. I've been okay, just preparing to go back to work.
Right.
So yeah, that's coming. And then, you know, and then in the not so distant future, I'm actually going to be moving to a new apartment. So there's going to be a lot of stress around that.
Yeah.
So,
That'll be fun to deal with.
All the things.
Back to school. We're also live on the Rockfin and the Rumbles. So I see Indie News is in that Rumble chat. But last night we did Jesse and Indy did a whole thing for Warren Palooza. People should go support Warren if they can. Get him back on his feet as soon as possible. We'd love to have him back filming.
Or at minimum, if you just want to listen to some great music.
Yes.
Or great covers of music.
Yes.
Ranging the gamut of everything you could possibly think of. It's worth checking out. It's long, but there's going to be some gems in there that I'm sure people.
We got Prince and Sade. I was a very happy boy. His Sade was underrated.
He didn't play
as well.
Anita, but but well, I'll forgive Jesse for that.
We'll get there. You wanted him to do Luther, and I'm like, I don't know if Jesse could pull off Luther this late at night. You know, power to him if he can, but shit. Anyway, so we do have 4 stories this evening. Collin has a rant on the IRA bill, right, which is not a bill about the Irish Republican Army. But and you wanted to talk about the teacher shortage, right?
Yeah, I think, well, I saw this story last week, actually when I was on vacation last week, funny enough.
Yeah.
You know, I came across this story and I think, well, one, I'm a teacher, and being that I'm in the show, you know, I'm going to have that bias. So like you all are going to care with me. But
Yes.
I think this is a bigger problem that I want to connect it to something else. I think just as far as what's happening in the country in general, So, but using
Yeah.
that story to kind of explain more about other issues.
Then I
And
brought
then,
this couple of stories on tenant unions doing some actions themselves. And of course, I'm sure everyone saw Roger Waters destroy CNN. We'll get into that a little bit later. But Collin, you want to start us off?
sure thing.
Perfect.
Oh, actually, let me check this. See if I can.
Yeah, you
Okay,
got it.
good. Okay, good. You might have to hold on.
Need this to go away. How about that?
I need you to go away.
Yeah.
Not.
I can also do this. Which now that's all you see. So one of the two.
I think two for me. Actually, the way you had it before might be a little better for me. Easy to read. There.
Yep.
There you go. So yeah. So those of you who, and actually, I needed a lot of clarification on this bill. Again, on vacation last week, so I wasn't as active on Twitter as I normally am. But thank to shout out to Sabby and then other people who kind of filling in the gaps for me, and then just catching up with certain people in the space since coming back from vacation, just getting to know a little bit more about the details of this bill, which is basically a compromise to the Build Back Better bill. So that in of itself should tell you that, this bill isn't great. And, I'll talk more specifics about in a second, but actually this is kind of two kind of connected stories, because there is going to be an issue within the bill that people are not necessarily talking about that I also kind of want to bring up as well.
Yeah.
But this article is an opinion piece from Common Dreams, written by CJ Policronio.
Sure.
Forgive me for spelling. The Inflation Reduction Bill should just be the beginning. Without more direct intervention on the part of the public sector in combating the climate crisis, what IRA will produce is a green capitalist industry with profit-making as its overriding concern. The Schumer-Manchin Reconciliation Bill, known as the Inflation Reduction Act, which is expected to become law after it cleared the Senate on a party line vote, and key House Democrats have already signaled that they will vote for it when it moves to lower chambers of Congress, aims to boost the economy and fight the climate crisis. It will also extend the Affordable Care Act subsidy through 2024, lower a handful of prescription drugs prices for those who are on Medicare, boost RRS reinforcement, and require large corporations to pay at least 15% of their totals in taxes.
I got you.
Oh. Can't see now.
Oh, you can't see.
Well,
there
part
you
of
go.
there we go.
Yep.
This reconciliation bill is a slimmed down version of the Build Back Better Act. It's a compromise and therefore hardly adequate to address the needs of American working class people and confront the climate challenge. In fact, to call the RA a historical piece of legislation is an overstatement. We've heard a lot of that in mainstream media this week. But it's a step in the right direction, especially for a country where corporations and big business run roughshod over the common good. I will preface by saying I had some, again, this is an opinion piece. I have some takes, I get why CJ is trying to make this sound a little bit more, positive than it is. I get it, but I think he might be overdoing it a little bit. But moving on. First, forget inflation in spite of what the title that the bill carries. RA will have no impact on inflation in 2022 and negligible effect in 2023, according to a report from the Congressional Budget Office.
Cool. You got it? Is your thing still working? There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You need to remove that screen now.
This one? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. A major piece of the bill focuses on healthcare. There are some positive aspects in it, but again, hardly enough to make anything beyond a moderate impact on the well-being of average Americans. It extends Affordable Care Act subsidies for the next 3 years, lowers somewhat Medicare costs for low-income families, and permits Medicare for the first time in its history to negotiate prices for some prescription drugs. Prescription drugs cost much more in the US, in some instances by as much as over 400%, as in the case of Humira, which is used to treat many inflammatory conditions in adults, than in other developed countries. And the US remains the only country in the developed world without a universal healthcare system. As Bernie Sanders charged, this bill does nothing to address the systematic dysfunctionality of the American healthcare system. RA also seeks to address tax fairness and reduce inequality. It claims that it will create a more equitable United States by compelling corporations with more than $1 billion in profits to pay a 50% minimum tax. Conservative Democrat Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who always sides with the rich and the corporations, first forced the removal of the carried interest tax provision from the bill, and then delivered a gift to private equity firms by protecting them from the minimum tax aimed at large corporations. Forcing corporations making more than $1 billion in profits pay a minimum corporate tax rate of 15% can hardly be considered a major step forward in addressing the issue of inequality. However, the corporate minimum tax in the Inflation Reduction Act has quite different rules from the global minimum tax. It is possible, but not likely, that corporations could end up facing both taxes, and that would indeed be a useful start towards tackling extreme inequality. I have a slight problem with this, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Reef, pop quiz for you.
Okay.
Do you remember a certain event that Kyrsten Sinema attended a couple of months ago?
Vaguely, I do remember talking about it. I'm trying to remember exactly which one it was. Like, I remember there was. You're gonna tell me. I mean, I might as well fail the pop quiz and say I don't know. You know, because now I'm like, what is it? I remember it.
Shoot. Funny enough, I actually forgot the name of it. You know, I have to look it up real fast, or if you can.
Yeah, I got it.
Like, but you know, there was a very secretive event that's held in DC once a year, where certain people from certain corporations around the world come together to talk, you know, about global affairs. And Kyrsten Sinema was the only congressperson who was invited, as far as we know, according to the list that we were able to obtain.
This is the one Max, Blumenthal and stuff.
This was the one that Max Blumenthal tried to get information at, but he got turned away. This is the event that Franco from Frank Analysis also tried to get in, but got turned away. So if you just remember the name of the...
That's what I'm looking for. Franco will have videos on if I could look at his channel.
Yeah. But regardless, Kyrsten was at that event. And obviously, being the only congresswoman, you can figure out that why would she be the only congresswoman at this event? You know, and our guess would is to kind of help corporations, you know, maintain the boku bucks, you know. Yeah. So, you know, so the fact that, you know, she forced the removal of the interest tax provision from the bill makes a lot of sense, especially in light of knowing that she was at this.
The Bilderberg,
there we go.
Yeah, that's it.
So yeah, she was at the Bilderberg conference back in the spring. So obviously this kind of ties into this bill, you know, that she removed that provision, you know, to protect corporations. So, right. You know, so again, the idea that CJ tried to kind of say like maybe it could be a good thing. No, it's not. So anything that supports corporations is almost never good, you know, for us within the working class. So but yeah, moving on.
Okay.
Energy and climate are what the Inflation Reduction Act is mostly all about. IRA would raise approximately $739 billion over 10 years and spend $433 billion on new investments over a decade, resulting in an overall deficit reduction of roughly $300 billion. The big winners from this deal are indeed energy and climate, as IRA pledges $369 billion towards energy security and clean energy. The climate and environmental measures included in the bill are expected to reduce carbon emissions by 40% below 2005 levels by 2030. So let's take a look at the energy and climate provisions included in the Act. There are dozens of clean energy provisions in IRA that accelerate the deployment of clean energy technologies and reduce carbon emissions, all while retaining and even enhancing the reliance of fossil fuels. Indeed, the most striking aspect of the energy and climate provisions in IRA is the undeniable concerted effort on part of its architects to balance climate protections with interests of the fossil fuel industry. As such, there is no pathway in IRA towards a transition to a post-fuel economy. First, there's a plethora of tax credits for energy produced from certain renewable sources, as well as for projects designed for the installation of solar and wind facilities located in low-income communities. Direct air capture facilities are also eligible for generous credits, provided that they capture at least 1,000 metric tons. Tax credits are also extended to biodiesel on alternate fuels, green hydrogen, and residential and commercial energy efficient buildings.
Wait, back up one. Yeah, alternative fuels, biodiesel, okay. Green hydrogen. Right, all right. Sounds like they're trying to sneak in some fossil fuel lobbying in there, but okay.
Well, yeah, that's what exactly what it is.
Yeah.
The act also enhances the tax credit available for certain new clean vehicles, create new incentives for clean energy investments, and establishes a credit for qualifying sustainable transportation fuel.
Like clean coal.
Like
yeah.
What's that?
Clean coal is what it reminds me of, this
clean
whole
coal.
Right?
Right. So I tweeted this out, I believe on Monday.
Yeah.
Because I said, once again, the devil is in the details.
Yeah.
So there was an article on The Verge that, according to, actually, to Andrew J. Hawkins from The Verge, no electric vehicles on the market today qualify for the new EV tax credit.
Yeah.
Continuing. Congress is poised to approve newly expanded tax credits for electric vehicles, but the rules are written in such a way as to effectively disqualify every electric vehicle that's currently on the market today. That's because most EVs run on lithium-ion batteries that are mostly made in China. The nation has a lock on some 76% of the battery market today. The US only represents 8%. And to get a deal passed in a deadlocked Senate, Democrats agreed to provisions that would require eligible vehicles to use batteries that are made in North America. The Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, which passed the Senate this weekend in a party-line vote, would require batteries to have at least 40% of materials sourced from North America or a U.S. trading partner by 2024 in order to be eligible for a $7,500 tax break. By 2029, battery components would have to be 100% made in North America. Batteries that contain minerals that were extracted, processed, or recycled by a foreign entity of concern, which is defined as a state sponsoring terrorism or countries blocked by the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, would be ineligible for the credit. China is listed as a foreign entity of concern by the federal government. Democrats, including West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who negotiated the deal in secret with Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, are running on a tough on China message this year. But the auto industry says that the new requirements would basically disqualify every EV on the market today. According to the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, the auto industry's main lobbying group, there are currently 72 EV models available for purchase in the United States, including battery, plug-in hybrid, and fuel cell electric vehicles. Of those models, 70% are ineligible for the tax credit when the bill passes. And by 2029, when the additional sourcing requirements go into effect, none will qualify for the full credit.
Gotcha.
The $7,500 credit might exist on paper, but no vehicles will qualify for this purchase incentive over the next few years. John Bozzella, president and CEO of the Alliance, said in a blog post. That's going to be a major setback for a collected target of 50% electric vehicle sales by 2030.
Mm-hmm.
So any thoughts on that?
I mean, the fact that no EV models available for like, you know, and it's only because, hold on, so it's only because of like, the fact that the lithium's not made here.
Basically.
Okay. And like nothing, not even the, I guess it's all because of all of them have batteries, and if you're not making any of the batteries here,
right, those have to be outsourced.
Yeah,
and
Samsung is sending them.
Right, and essentially those are outsourced from China. And like right now, especially now, given and I think this especially kind of goes into play what Nancy Pelosi did, last week, or well, 2 weeks ago now, which kind of jeopardized all of that. This also kind of plays into that as far as, if China is now a country of concern where we can't even ship these batteries in, or a car in that has those materials, they would be useless for the credit.
Yeah.
But not only that, like electric EVs are generally more expensive anyway.
Yeah, they're ridiculous.
Yeah, they start for maybe, I think on average, maybe around 40,000.
Yeah.
So a $7,500 tax break is not going to help people or going to convince people to buy an EV, when a gas-based vehicle is going to be a lot cheaper for most people at this point.
Yeah, until we can't afford gas,
Right.
So
it's basically pushing, again, the working class out of this. So only the rich would be able to afford an EV, or for us, probably having to go into debt in order to get one.
Yeah.
Even if you use the credit. So it's, again, something that is not necessarily helpful for working people if they really want to help the environment and, and buy this type of car. Most of them are going to be out, and given this article, none of them will qualify for the credit anyway.
Right.
So no incentive to buy an EV at this point, really, given this. But anyway, I just wanted to add this article into it because, because even with that credit, I was just kind of like, like this doesn't sound quite right, and to be fair, I know nothing about cars, but then I saw this tweet, like early in the week. So it's like, and I read it, okay. Then it was kind of like, yeah, that probably sounds more in line with, what is probably true, or what people are not necessarily telling you. But anyway, back to article number 1.
Okay.
There is financial assistance in addition to tax incentives for renewable energy, as well as for carbon capture systems for rural and agricultural communities. Rural America will be the recipient of approximately $40 billion in clean energy programs and climate change mitigation projects over the next 10 years. There's also funding for the National Forest System and for state and private forestry conservation programs. There are many positive but also negative aspects behind the climate investment initiatives being included in IRA. Renewable energy funding across the board is a foundation building block of a clean energy economy. However, without more direct intervention on the part of the public sector in combating the climate crisis, what IRA will produce is a green capitalist industry with profit making as an overriding concern. Worse yet, investing in unproven carbon capture technologies is a sure way to keep the fossil fuel industry in the game. Indeed, IRA provides no pathway to a post-fossil fuel economy and shies away from tackling climate injustice. As part of its goal to maintain enhanced energy protection, which in reality means protecting the long-term interests of the fossil fuel industry, IRA mandates new sales of oil and gas drilling in Alaska and the Gulf of Mexico.
Of course it does.
Extends the definition of outer continental shelf to include land both within the exclusive economic zone of the U.S. and adjacent to U.S. territory, and essentially nullifies President Biden's September 8, 2020 memorandum withdrawing certain areas from leasing.
Right.
Currently, there are more.
The one good thing that people have said he's done ever.
Right.
Like, okay.
So remember where Biden was like, no fracking?
Yeah. I mean, just among the many things. I mean, I remember articles complaining about, like, you guys can't even take a good thing when you see it. You close the Arctic to drill. It's like, okay, you know, I'll believe it when it happens. And here it is not happening. Yeah. Yeah, crazy.
Currently, there are more than 9,000 approved but unused leases for drilling on federal and tribal lands, and IRA is throwing open even more public lands to oil drilling. In addition, IRA restricts the Department of the Interior from issuing a right-of-way for wind and solar energy development on federal land during the 10-year period after the bill is enacted. Coal Baron Joe Manchin also managed to secure a pledge from Democrats for support for IRA that there would be no obstacles to the construction and operation of controversial gas line known as Mountain Valley Pipeline. His corruption, as in the case of cinema, knows no boundaries. In 2021, the U.S. committed itself to reducing carbon emissions to 52% below 2005 levels by 2030. IRA expects to cut U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030. Thus, it narrows but does not close the gap with the goal the Biden administration set under the Paris Climate Agreement. However, it is highly debatable whether the climate provisions included in IRA would actually reduce emissions by 40% by 2030. Providing $369 billion over 10 years to fight the climate crisis is not enough in itself to reduce carbon emissions by 40% by 2020. It all depends on how private investment in new energy supply infrastructure IRA will encourage. And actually, I will read this. Okay. Economist Robert Poling of the University of Massachusetts at Amherst believed that public spending on clean energy through IRA will encourage at least another $600 billion in private spending, which would bring the total public plus private clean energy spending on the IRA to approximately $100 billion per year, or $1 trillion over 10 years. So basically saying what we're doing right now is chicken change in comparison to how much money
should be doing. Right.
In an interview at Truthout, Poland states the following: by my own estimates and those of others, for the U.S. to reach the emission reduction target set up by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, 50% carbon CO2 emissions cut by 2030 and zero emissions by 2050 will require about $400 billion in today's economy and an average of $600 billion per year between now and 2050. So the total amount of public and private clean energy spending generated by the IRA would deliver at best about 25% of necessary funding level. And this is supposed to be the best case scenario. The Inflation Reduction Act should have been a transformational piece of legislation, but fortunately it isn't. it is a step in the right direction and clear proof that activism can initiate tangible change. The struggle continues.
The struggle continues.
Well, the struggle continues, but again, like, this is the compromise of the compromise, basically.
Yeah.
And so, number one. Number two, the fact that they managed to get Joe Manchin to sign off on it basically was like, okay, what is he getting out of this? And it's not going to be a good thing, you know? But basically this all goes to say, you know, the Democrats, you know, are doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of what they should be doing. Because according to this article, it's not even at best a quarter of what they're supposed to do. You know, so I don't know. So like I said, I think with this article, I think CJ was trying to put a positive spin to this and saying it's something.
Yeah.
But given like, you know, like if we don't do something today, well, really yesterday, you know, like we're going to have more serious climate issues, you know, on the horizon, you know, I would think that we should be willing to spend money, as much money as possible to kind of negate a lot of those issues instead of focusing on money in Ukraine, which is causing a lot more climate change, but no one's talking about that.
Yeah.
But instead giving the bare minimum to give the illusion of, oh, you know, we did something, you know, so vote for us, you know, and it really does nothing. But I think more importantly, you know, like, and I think especially given that we're in a pandemic right now, it's like, and people are saying this as a win, but my thing is, what are people going to tangibly get out of this now?
Yeah.
You know, people need to see the results now in order for them to feel like the Democrats are doing something that is remotely in the right direction. And so far, it's just been very minimal or nothing at best, you know,
Right.
at the worst of what Democrats are doing right now. So, you know, I feel like Democrats are feeling like this might be enough for them to maintain, you know, the Congress and maybe the Senate, you know, in November, but I don't think so. Like, you know, because, you know, like I said, if economic issues don't improve for people within the next month or so,
Yeah.
you know, this bill means nothing. It means nothing already, but like people are not going to talk about this bill and being like, oh, this changed my life.
Right.
You know, so, you know, it's just a lot of good stuff for corporations, basically, you know, even maybe quote unquote, maybe well-intended, but still under a capitalist bend, essentially, is what, you know, this bill basically amounts to.
I mean, it brings us back to that inclusive capitalism stuff that, you know, we talked about a couple of weeks, where it's like, and this, what's the term that's Convoconch has been using, this what is it, interpolar intersectional imperialism, that phrase that's been thrown around recently, today specifically, but I think Fee was the first person I heard use that, so I'll credit her. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's just frustrating because it's like climate stuff needs to have happened like a decade ago for it to really impact stuff.
Not even really since the 70s, honestly.
Yeah.
So, and you know, this is what we're getting. You know, when they're saying we should be spending what, like $1 billion?
Yeah.
I would probably argue maybe even more than that at this point, you know, towards climate. But there's the Democrats for you.
Yeah. Speaking of, since they're in power, you've got another thing that you brought with us this evening?
I do have another thing. So obviously, being a teacher, this is close to my heart and probably will affect my job. So, but I want people to care about this much about this issue as I do. So, I co-host this show, so I can do that. But no surprise to people, this has been happening for a very long time. But I think definitely since the pandemic, it's just been exacerbated, more so now. But we have a teacher shortage of one of catastrophic proportions. Did you know that, Reef?
Catastrophic teacher shortage. Okay. I did know a little, yes. You got it.
Oh. There was actually a video clip that I put in, didn't come up. That's fine.
Okay.
Don't need it.
Weird.
You need to move that screen now, so I can read.
Yes. There you go.
Yeah. So, all right. So, rural school districts in Texas are switching to 4-day weeks this fall due to lack of staff. Florida is asking veterans with no teaching background to enter classrooms. Arizona is allowing college students to step in and instruct children. The teacher shortage in America has hit crisis levels, and school officials everywhere are scrambling to assure that as students return to classrooms, someone will be there to educate them. I have never seen it this bad, Dad Jumnick, Executive Director of the School Superintendents Association, said of the teacher shortage. Right now, it's number one on the list of issues that are concerning school districts. Necessity is the mother of invention, and hard-pressed districts are going to have to come up with some solutions. It is hard to know exactly how many U.S. classrooms are short of teachers for the 2022-23 school year. No national database precisely tracks the issue. The state and district level reports have emerged across the country detailing staffing gaps that stretch from the hundreds to the thousands and remain wide open as school winds rapidly to a close.
Ooh. Go ahead.
The Nevada State Education Association estimates that roughly 3,000 teaching jobs remain unfulfilled across the state's 17 school districts as of early August. In a January report, the Illinois Association of Regional School Superintendents found that 88% of school districts statewide were having problems with teacher shortages, while 2,040 teacher openings were either empty or filled with a less than qualified hire. And in the Houston area, the largest 5 school districts all reported that between 200 and 1,000 teaching positions remain open. Carlton Jenkins, superintendent of the Madison Metropolitan School District in Wisconsin, said teachers are so scarce that superintendents across the country have developed a whisper network to alert each other when educators move between states. We're at a point right now where if I have people who want to move to California, I call up and give a reference very quick, he said. And if someone is coming in from another place, say Minnesota, I have superintendent colleagues coming in Minnesota, they call and say, hey, I have teachers coming your way. Why are American schools so short-staffed? Experts point to a confluence of confluent. Sorry, I can't read. Conflusion of factors, including pandemic-induced teacher exhaustion, low pay, and some teachers sense that politicians and parents, and sometimes their own school board members, have little respect for their profession amid an escalating educational culture war that has seen many districts and states pass policies and laws restricting what teachers can say about U.S. history, race, racism, gender, and sexual orientation, as well as LGBTQ issues.
Confluence, by the way. FYI.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. The political situation in the United States, combined with legitimate after effects of COVID, has created this shortage, said Ryan Garden, president of the American Federation of Teachers. This shortage is contrived. Stopgap solutions for lack of staff run the gamut from offering teachers better pay to increase the pool of people who qualify as educators to bumping up class sizes. Not a good idea. But class sizes, not a good idea. Pay teachers more. But many of these temporary fixes are likely to harm students by diminishing their ability to learn, predicted Don Etchberry, president of the Nevada State Education Association. Any thoughts so far, Reef?
I mean, it's definitely like this feels like this has been happening in teaching forever. But I mean, the fact that it's continued to like be that way, mainly because of like, one, you're not going to get paid. It's terrible hours, even though you think you're off for the summer, you're not really. Like, you know, you're doing way too much stuff, even at like, even at the like the what you would think would be the easiest like classes to teach and stuff, as far as like age range and stuff, are usually the opposite. Like, you know, but it's definitely, I mean, it's interesting what they're blaming it on, you know, but
well, it's true, but it's not like this is new.
no,
They're acting like this is a new thing. This isn't a thing that's existed within the field forever, you know, but I think obviously with the pandemic, you know, it's just been exacerbated, and, you know, teachers, at least for me, have basically was saying, you know, during COVID, and I guess you could say now post-COVID, you know, the way that things were running before wasn't working. And now you're trying to bring back a normal that wasn't working into a new normal that's essentially not working, you know? So teachers are leaving, you know, because of that. And then now they're trying to scrambling and, you know, like, I just feel like only in teaching can you see this kind of disrespect that you're trying to bring in bodies, you know, like in the guise of, oh, we're going to do this to educate our children. You will not see this in any other profession. So I think it's just, even with this, just the idea, like, and I'll go into this more into the article later, but just having teachers who are not necessarily certified to be, which I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but the idea that, you know, like, teachers have to pay for that licensing, you know, and more often than not, you cannot teach unless you have that certification. So the fact that like teachers now are not having to go through that process, you know, like in this such an emergency, quote unquote, I think is a lot selling, I think, to the rest of us who had to do it the way that we were instructed to do, you know? So I think it's just kind of a slap in the face to teachers currently who had to go through these hoops via bureaucracy. And now, because we're in an emergency, that they can just let any old body in the classroom who may or may not necessarily be qualified.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on. When you start to double classes, teachers don't have that one-on-one with the students, that personal ability to understand what the student needs, both academically and socially, Etchberry said. Danica Hills, a former school-based therapist and state director of Unite Us, a technology company that focuses on health and social services providers, said this diminishment in the quality of education is coming at the worst possible moment. America's school children are still struggling to recover from the coronavirus pandemic, she says, and the havoc months of online learning wreaked on students' academic progress, social skills, and mental health. We know students of all ages suffered deep declines in academic achievement during the pandemic, and now is the time to course correct those changes, Mills said. Instead, I think and fear we may be facing an even bigger decline. Nevada Clark's County School District, which serves 320,000 students, is one of the many school systems taking a scattershot approach to staff shortages by trying several solutions at once. In hopes of shrinking its roughly 1,300 teacher vacancies, the district has raised a starting teacher salary by $7,000 and is offering $4,000 relocation bonus to new teachers who move out of state for more than 100 miles. In an interview, Superintendent Jesus J. Farr said the district is also granting employees a retention bonus of up to $5,000 for staying in their jobs.
Okay.
But with school start in a week, well, now, you know, because this article was published last week, the district is still only 92% staffed, Jar said. And despite around-the-clock efforts from his human resources team, he does not believe the district will close the cap in time. I am still worried. I'm still losing sleep at night, and I'm not going to fill the rest of the 8% of our classes by 2 days ago.
Right.
Said. Come Monday, well, come and gone.
Yeah.
The district will be forced to deploy patching measures, Jarrah said, including pulling administrators from the central office to work as substitutes and combining multiple classes together in large spaces such as auditoriums and gymnasiums. Band-Aid wise, I think they're doing whatever they can, said Jeff Warren, executive director of the Clark County Association of School Administrators. It's a mess. I'll say other words, but I'm going to be nice here.
Right.
Other districts and states are attempting more unorthodox fixes. A new state law in Arizona signed by Governor Doug Ducey last month allows college students to take teaching jobs. A similar law, which took effect in Florida on July 1st, offers K-12 teaching jobs to military veterans who served for at least 4 years. The veterans do not need a bachelor's degree, but must have earned at least 60 college credits while maintaining a grade point average of at least 2.5. 2.5 is a C.
Yeah, barely. Not even really. Like,
not even. So you're gonna have veterans who may not have a college degree, who do not have any training to teach any children in a classroom.
Right. Yep.
Please tell me that makes sense to you.
I mean, it doesn't. Like,
I'm saying this because this is your state.
I know. Look, Florida doesn't know what it's doing. Okay? Like, this isn't Florida's fault. It's just like, I don't understand why to me, there's like 9 other professions you could go to that also don't have like standard, teaching license, you know what I mean? Like, that aren't college educated, whatever, that yes, could do what they're like, like people with childcare backgrounds and, or, like sociology and psychology, like any of those things that might be able to deal with children in some way or form. Like, I don't think the military knows what to do, you know what I mean? Like,
right. And for some of them, it's like, some of them might be suffering from PTSD,
yeah, like,
I can't imagine, like, and if they can manage it, great, but like, I can't imagine some of them, being in a classroom with like 20 plus kids, maybe acting up, and not necessarily having the management skill to kind of wrangle them and kind of get them in line for a lesson. Like, I can't imagine that's not going to work.
No.
So, like,
I mean, it does seem like a Major Pain like sequel, but otherwise, like, Major Pain does like goes to school. I mean, come on, that's like a very easy, like, we can do that like next week, but anyway, yeah, Andrew Spar. I think I might have met him. Yeah.
Well, president of the Florida Education Association said the need for teachers in the state is dire. You think? His association estimates there are at least 8,000 teacher vacancies this year, up from 5,000 the year before. But Spar does not believe the veterans program is really a solution. Thank you, as it may lead to unqualified individuals entering classrooms.
Yeah.
I think we all appreciate what our military veterans have done for our country in terms of protecting our freedoms both here and abroad, he says. But just because you are in the military does not mean you'll be a great teacher. And in Texas, Mineral Wells Independent School District and Chico Independent School District, officials have switched to a 4-day school week for the upcoming academic year. In both districts, which are small and rural, school leaders said the change is meant to attract and retain teachers amid staffing shortages, the Texas Tribune reported. Neither district responded to a request for comment. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
it's not because you want teachers to come. Like you're trying to keep the ones you got, basically.
Don't come. That's what they're saying. Like, relax, don't do it. Yeah, I mean, again, it feels like this has been happening forever. You know, like, you know, I remember like my mother talking about people like they do that all the time, like bring in people who aren't qualified, and like they just bend the rules slightly, you know, because of certain loopholes that have been put in place. That, you know, this guy's like nephew who works on the, you know, his uncle works on the board of education, like manages to like get, you know what I mean? Like it's crazy, Collin. I know, because you can't say as much as you would really like to on the kind of politics that happen in a school, but let me tell you, it's kind of ridiculous and ruins the lives of children time and time again. But you know, like it's just funny. But yeah, so
It's funny, but it's sad in the worst possible way because ultimately this affects kids.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that it just shows, and I've said this on many streams before, but I think it just shows how lacksensical, you know, like our country does not value education at all. And again, this is something I call out Joe Biden for as an educator.
Yes.
You know, like, why aren't you making this a big deal?
Why are
Joe
we taking
Biden?
away free school lunches? Why are we taking away like the stuff that we've put in place to make sure that kids aren't in situations where they're having to, you know, do crime just to afford a lunch themselves? Like, you know, when we can just be handing out basic like nutrition and education should be an easy peasy thing for people to want to fund, you know, like, and you should be able to fund. Teachers should not be making less than like, they should be making well above minimum wage.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they should be able to live in the town that they like work in.
Right.
Like that should be a thing that's possible in a standard like 2-bedroom house. Like that should be, you know, it's like between them and the candlestick maker, you can't get more classically appreciated than the teacher itself, you know, and apples aren't cutting it anymore. So, but anyway,
Joe was like, this country is more cold-hearted than anything in my lifetime, and I'm old. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. And, you know, like the way we treat our children is the way that reflects on society, I think. And just given what we're doing now, I think just shows, you know, how much we don't care about each other, much less care about the least of these, in this case, kids, you know, in our society that have to go to school now necessarily, not necessarily having a teacher or having a teacher that's qualified or having to be in a huge classroom and then not going to get the attention that they need in order to do well. So, and that's just some of the issues on top of the other issues that already exist in many schools. Like you may not have heat or air conditioning, or like you might have a school building that's too old to you know, like, or like the facilities are run down or whatever, or yeah, it's just an onslaught of issues. But
there you go. So where do we leave off?
I'm actually going to skip around a bit.
Okay.
Because you know, because I think we kind of get the point, you know, from this.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm just going to cut it here
Cool.
because just to kind of keep time, but I think you guys have already heard, you know, I think enough. But I think in what we shared is, I think, more than enough just to kind of say, you know, the state of what education is in America right now, and just like the lack of care that we have, you know, just within the field right now. And something I definitely want to add, you know, and you know, I know you and Indy kind of mentioned this, you know, on How Do We Miss That a few weeks ago, where there are teachers in Brookline, Mass, that basically did an illegal strike in order for them to get the tangibles that they need. You know, and I said this at my I had to do a training for my advocacy group earlier today. And I said, and my boss asked me to kind of speak, you know, regarding my experience, you know, within the organization. And basically what I said, especially to the folks who are new, I basically said, like, teachers have leverage now. You know, believe it or not, in spite of all the mess that we're seeing among teachers right now, teachers now have leverage. You know, we're in a position now that we're able to demand stuff, you know, for our livelihoods and for our students. So if this is any time for, you know, for teachers to kind of rise up and kind of make those demands, I think the time is ripe as ever. But I think, again, with a lot of unions, you know, you're not able to strike. And I think there is definitely a lot of fear with teachers, you know, in terms of, you know, oh, if I strike, I can lose my job, you know, and I can lose my benefits, I'll lose my pay, my livelihood, and all that kind of stuff. So I think we can all sympathize with that, because that's definitely a risk. However, at the same time, I think what, you know, the teachers in Brookline showed, I didn't mention this there, but I think in reflection, I definitely thought about this now. If there's enough teachers that a school district is willing to fire off the bat,
Yeah.
that's national news. And I'm sure that many school districts do not want that kind of attention to say, oh, we fired a whole roster of teachers because they they went on strike for better benefits.
Yeah.
They went on strike for things for our students. I don't think that's going to happen realistically. So, you know, I think in thinking about that, I think, but a lot of that has to do with organization too, because again, you know, like, I do want to preface that, and I'm not advocating for teachers to just strike if your union is illegal or whatever. I'm not promoting that. What I am promoting is the idea that there needs to be organizations that needs to start happening around these issues, so that, you know, with organization, meaning like think long-term of what is your goal, and make those mobilizations and those actions happen between, like, through that, so that you're able to make that, you know, your demands known, and that school boards will not have a choice but to make those demands for people. And so, you know, so I think, so yeah, again, I'm not promoting just strike, you know, like, and then I wouldn't even say in many issues like striking is going to be effective. That has to be in part of other things that you do. So, but I think, as I said, there teachers, and I would say this just across the board, people have leverage now. You know, we haven't gone shit within the pandemic. You know, we're in the middle of inflation. We haven't had our wages being raised. People are struggling, you know, and, you know, people are trying to figure out what to do, you know.
Yeah.
So this is not just a message for teachers. This is really a message for all of us in terms of the time to organize is now. The time to get together, you know, is now. And I didn't want to say this now, and I'm not going to go into details because, you know, it's not important, but I think, well, basically I'll say, like, there are certain people, prominent people within the space that are going off their popularity and personality to use that as a wedge to divide people, especially on the left, and not focus on the policy, you know. And I think we've been seeing a lot of that as of late, you know, like that we're fighting over personalities and not necessarily, you know, what are policies that will make lives better for people. And, you know, and I know like in our group chat we've talked about this, you know, and I mean the drama sometimes it can be funny, it can be like, yes, you know, like, but it's not gonna get us anywhere.
No.
You know, but
it takes
you know,
people
the
being
idea-
better at dealing with it, which is,
Right.
you know, like you have to have pretty emotionally stable individuals. But we did get a tip on Rockfin from
Hey.
Laura Beza that said, I am interested in the educator crisis. Thank you for covering that. Thank you for the
Oh,
tip.
thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. That just gives me
so-
more incentive to do more.
I know, right? So
but-
it does also kind of bring us into our third story for the night of, you know, I wanted to showcase some tenant unions and what they are capable of doing, especially when I don't know if anyone remembers, but someone specifically below me was asking about the 3% at one point, you know, to someone on the Capitol steps. Do you remember what that what people were doing on those Capitol steps when you were there, Collin?
Oh, you said 3%.
Yeah, sorry.
Like,
Wrong percentage.
yeah, 10.
Yes. 10%.
10%. Housing
But-
eviction.
Right. People, and particularly the eviction moratorium, right?
Right.
So that is now doesn't exist.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. So this is by Joe Piety from Workers World, and this is Pop Resistance, giving him a little love. But he wants to talk specifically about Philadelphia unions and who claim housing is a human right, which I personally agree. But so this is a march from demonstrators supporting the UC townhome residents. This was July 9th, right? So for months, 70 black and brown families have organized resistance to the threatened eviction by the Altman Company in Philadelphia. When supporters and residents set up a protest tent city on July 9th, Altman got a judge to order what he called trespassers off his private property. The area labor movement galvanized with a strong response, pointing out that workers have little interest in cooperating with Altman to carry out the eviction. So, the Philadelphia Workers Solidarity Network and the Save the UC Townhomes Coalition first put out a petition with a plea to workers and union members, don't cross our picket line. If the city attempts to tear down the encampment, over 400 workers, labor activists, union locals, and housing activists have signed on. Right? So, further strengthening worker voices, the Labor for Black Lives Coalition sent a strong statement of solidarity with the UC townhomes to Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney and other city officials, signed by 16 unions and labor orgs representing tens of thousands of black and brown workers, some of the largest unions in Philly. The statement calls on the city to immediately block the sale of UC townhomes. The complete statement is as follows. So, thoughts so far before we get to the statement, Collin?
I do, but I want to wait.
Okay. So, the Labor for Black Lives Coalition calls on Mayor Kenney and city leaders to save the University City townhomes. The Philadelphia Labor for Black Lives Coalition stands in solidarity with the courageous residents and housing activists fighting to save the UC townhomes. As a coalition representing our city's black union leadership and members, we believe unequivocally that housing is a human right. The University City townhomes, owned by Brett Altman, has provided low-income housing to more than 70 families for almost 40 years. Altman has announced a pending sale, mass displacement, and demolition of the property in September. The location is one of the final affordable housing communities left in what was historically known as the Black Bottom neighborhood. This community has its roots as one of the earliest black neighborhoods in Philly, but over the last 50 years has been systematically dismantled as the result of urban renewal and the expansion of the University of Drexel and the University of Pennsylvania. We are calling on Mayor Kenney and city leaders to provide a solution to keep UC townhomes in their homes and commit to preserving deeply affordable housing for very low-income seniors and families. We call on the city to immediately block the sale of UC townhomes, require investment in these units to make them safe and livable homes, and halt developer plans to develop the land upon which they are built. So, have any thoughts yet, Collin?
Gentrification at its finest.
Yep. Yep. And very similar to, shout out to Afeni who covered this, where school housing over in, what's that school in DC? Howard, right. And how it was atrocious.
Well, it's funny because I live right by Howard. I live 2 blocks from Howard. Like, and I'm not racking on Howard because especially like students are coming back this week.
Yeah.
For classes, so I don't want to rack on Howard, but some of that infrastructure is garbage.
Yeah.
Like the buildings are old, they're not very well maintained, but just around it, like within a block or so from the campus, you're seeing like brand new like condominiums being built up, so it's like, so instead, like, and I believe some of them are owned by Howard.
Yeah.
So instead of like giving those quality, housing to their students, they're providing, like housing, luxury housing to people who are living in the city. And it just does, it's just such, going down that street, it's such a, like a difference in like seeing Howard and how it is. And then right across the street and a little further down, it's like you see these high-rise, well, not high-rise, but like these luxury condominiums that are being started and more being built up, like all the now. But yeah, it's just, it's just the differences. It's just really striking. Like for those who know DC.
So, they continue, as a coalition of labor unions representing black and brown workers, we know that securing safe and affordable rental housing is a constant struggle for working class people of color in the city. A large number of the workers we represent are required to reside in the city as a condition of their employment, but rising rent costs, a shortage of affordable housing, and structural barriers embedded in the rental application and affordable housing voucher process make securing housing increasingly difficult. We need our city's leaders to stand with our black communities so that our workers are able to continue living and working in Philadelphia for years to come. So, I wanted to bring attention to this story and specifically another story, just to kind of show that like this is a international thing, in my opinion, as well, right? So, the tenants of North York building demand landlord rescind eviction notices. So this is in Toronto, as the locals would call it. This is from CBC News, right? So they talk about tenants of a North York apartment building are calling on their landlord to rescind all temporary eviction notices issued to people who live on the first floor. The notice, known as N13 forms, have been issued to about a dozen tenants of 1570 Lawrence Avenue West, a 6-story building with 87 units. The evictions will allow workers to complete major renovations while the tenants are out of their units. On Sunday, about 20 people protested the notices by putting up flyers on poles near the Greater Toronto Area home of the landlord, Kyle Poulos, president of Poulos Investments. The tenants also handed out flyers to his neighbors. So, we are aware that extreme works needs to be done on that floor, but until you can make a proper plan that has the livelihoods of the tenants as the priority, withdrawal is necessary, the tenant said in posting on Instagram. According to Ontario's Landlord and Tenant Board, an N13 form is a type of eviction notice issued to end a tenancy when a landlord would like to demolish, repair, or convert a rental unit for another use. The Poulos Investment Team, a real estate investment company, said in an email on Sunday, it has been in constant communication with the tenants at the building in the last few months. It said it has communicated with tenants who received the N13 forms by letter, phone, email, and in person to discuss the situation. I'm going to press X for doubt on that one myself, but the company said tenants on the first floor have to leave their units for the renovations to be completed. There is no possible way for the required work to be completed safely while tenants occupy the units, the company said. This has been communicated to the tenants numerous times. No one is being asked to permanently leave. The N13 allows for all residents to return the units at their original rents once the repairs have been completed. Right, except they would have already had to find another home that might put them in a contract with another building, you know. Right. So it's kind of like, you know, the company asking you to leave. Like you're not being fired, you know, but technically, like,
right. It's just the idea, like immediate thought is, you know, you're going to displace tenants from your property. Like, have you made any plans of where they're going to go? Have you given them financial compensation to find a home?
Right.
How long are these
renovations going to take?
And what's the guarantee that they're able to get them back? Because generally, like, if you're making renovations in a place, especially given I feel this is kind of a large scale renovation, they're not trying to have those tenants back.
No.
Generally, they're making those renovations to increase the rent.
Yes.
To attract a certain tenant.
Right.
You know? So so again, it's just all bullshit here.
Yep. So the company said it believes that the protest outside of the homes of its president on Sunday was an inappropriate way to convey concerns. There's no justification for the sort of intimidation and bullying displayed by the tenants and Renoviction's TO today. There are appropriate channels of communication, and this was certainly not one of them, the company said. So in a letter to tenants, the company said, contrary to the practice of reno evictions, we follow the guidelines set forth in the N13 and have no history of abusing its process. So the tenants want to have their voice heard a little bit too. So I don't think it's fair, tenant says. Sandeep Saran, a tenant who is expected to leave by the end of the month because he received an N13 form, said he is worried about the future. He has lived in the building for the past 14 years. He said the first floor tenants could be moved to upper floors while the renovations are being done. Saran said the landlord, as soon as it acquired ownership recently, sent a letter telling all tenants they can leave with 30 days notice instead of 60 days because it is planning major renovations. I have no plan.
Wait.
Yeah.
They just had 30 days?
Yes.
Oh, God, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Yes. So I have no plan, he said. I don't think it's fair. I don't think the renovations are necessary. The landlord has assured him that he will be able to return to his unit at the current rent after the work, but the N13 notice still has him distressed. Well, yeah. And this is also not saying that they couldn't evict you right after, you know, or figure out another way to hike it right after that.
Right. But not only that, this tenant has been living at this building for
14 years.
So obviously, if he's living there for that long, he must be a decent tenant. So
you would think,
you think that he'll be ideal to keep.
Yeah.
You know, given that he's basically proven his worth, essentially.
Right.
You know.
Celeste Brown here, another tenant, said the company is only interested in making money. Her family has lived in the building for more than 10 years. Nobody has a plan, she said. I just see no morals. The main priority is profit. Meanwhile, in a document given to shareholders, Poulos Investments said it would like to rent to a new demographic of tenants. It has since apologized to existing tenants for using this language. They said sorry. You know, appreciate it. Some lawyers weigh in. Karmaya Saad, a lawyer, said it's very common for landlords in Toronto to try to increase the value of their properties through renovations. She noticed that under existing law, when tenants leave their accommodations, the landlord has the right to increase the rent. This is known as vacancy decontrol. So, wait, what? So, to try and increase the value of the properties through renovations. Under existing law, when tenants leave their accommodations, the landlord has the right to increase the rent. Right, so once they leave, so they're saying that, yeah, you'd be at the same rent price. So anyway, fundamentally, the issue is that housing is treated as a form of investment. separate from its utility as a necessary commodity for life. She said, when you have a situation where people who have capital are able to buy up housing and then rent it out and make a profit on that, it's unsustainable in the long run. Certainly, that's reflected in the current rental market, where people are paying far beyond what is a reasonable proportion of their monthly income just to survive, just to have somewhere to live, and those numbers aren't going down. So yeah, couldn't agree more on that. So I just wanted to feel like, you know, these two organizations that came together, that Renovation TO or whatever, came together to try to fight this, and what was it? The Black Coalition of like other unions got involved with the first story in Philly.
Right.
But like I finding out that like renters have their own power as, you know, proletariat themselves, you know. So, but I don't know. What do you think?
It's interesting that, well, a couple of things. What I noticed is that I think from both articles, I think a common link is that these are renters.
Yeah.
You know, so they had no rights at all. When I was visiting my dad in Barbados a few weeks ago, like, and I've heard this quote from him, but my dad's a Pan-Africanist, so he's very much, you know, I'm kind of more traditional in a lot of ways, but he quoted, you know, Malcolm X, you know, basically saying revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. So basically, you know, Malcolm X promoted the idea of owning something.
Yeah.
You know, land, you know, owning a home or whatever else. And
Right.
so, you know, which I definitely agree with, you know, I think especially if you own a home, that's a legacy for your family. It gives you some standing within the community, you know, but I think what we're seeing now is a lot of, you know, larger corporations are buying up these homes for profit, you know, and pushing out, you know, people of color, especially, or poor white people out of these communities who can't afford it, you know, who may rent, or, you know, people who do own, you know, try to price them out of their homes,
Yeah.
you know, to expand, you know, their property portfolio, essentially.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, it does bring into the idea of like what we should be doing as far as owning property, you know, if you wanted to own a home or something like that. It definitely brought those thoughts up for me.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, immediately my other thought, which I said I wanted to wait for, like, you know, I know we talk about Smalls a bit, but like Chris Smalls is basically going on a hot labor summer tour right now.
Yeah.
You know, like, where was he for this? Now, granted, this is not connected to what is happening at Amazon,
Right.
you know, like in Philly, but these are people who are organizing, you know, around the idea of like corporations coming in, you know, and taking their homes. And like, I feel like someone like Chris, with the stature that he has right now, could at least speak to that, or at least maybe make an attempt to make an appearance. I don't know what it is, but I think it's just like, I think it's just, for me, the disconnect of people who say that they support these causes and are for these causes are not necessarily there, or are not necessarily promoting what is happening on the ground versus
Right.
what we kind of see in the media, which is kind of more glam.
And even
You
then,
know, or-
like I didn't hear anyone talk about this mainstream, like in any way. Like, you know, like you have to find it out through back channels and you know, like you know, like Pop Resistance has to put it out. You know,
Right. But I think for a
Like-
lot of us, I mean, at least tonight, you know, like I got the Peter Shorter story was from the Washington Post, which, you know, I think that's a big enough story that a lot of, you
Yeah.
know, mainstream media is definitely covering that, you know, so I think that at least that's something good, at least in mainstream media. But, you know, but a lot of these stories, and I think, you know, I'm very happy that we do this, is kind of taking the more obscure stories that no one is necessarily talking about and kind of highlighting that to highlight, the work that is happening, or at least what people are trying to do. To kind of see the idea, like, there is organization happening. It's just that, and again, I feel like for a lot of politicians, this is like, if they really were involved in their districts, this is stuff that they should be aware of somewhat, where they're able to kind of bring those issues to Congress. So I think especially in like Philly, and I don't know who is a congressperson in Philly right now, but like off the top of my head, but like that congressperson should have been aware of what's happening. At the end of the day, it's the people that we should be doing the work, but ideally we talk about the inside outside game a lot. Like, these issues should be elevated to our politicians in power to kind of elevate and make that push for change, for systematic change, especially for housing rights. But we're not seeing that. So, so it can so a lot of these stories kind of, are not talked, like they're invisible. So, but I'm glad
speaking
that
of
we
stuff,
try and bring some visibility to this.
I think so too. One of the if people missed it last week, we talked about some organizations coming together to speak on police torture victims. So there was 490 counts of torture, and I sent that over to Hardlands too. Hopefully they picked it up. I saw they retweeted our story, so appreciate that. But I wanted to bring people this little bit of fun news if people missed it. So Tara Reid shared this article from Blaze. Roger Waters rips war criminal Biden over Ukraine, declares Taiwan as part of China, lauds Russia for almost winning World War II. So did you see any of this?
I mean, I've seen the clips, but I've seen the clips of Walters with his interview. Yes.
We do have links, Ed. I will put links in chat here in a second. So
actually, I'll do that if you.
Cool. And I think he probably wants the Chicago one too, which is like last week's. But I'll bring this video up for people while we wait. So this is the video from CNN, right? So we'll see their version. I'm foreshadowing a little bit, but let's go here and hit play.
Pink Floyd co-founder Roger Waters' current solo tour, instead of turning down the politics, he's amping them up to 11. Last time out, he preached against Donald Trump and in favor of Palestine. This tour, twice delayed by COVID and ominously titled "This Is Not a Drill," includes references to police murdering black men, semi-automatic weapons and abortion, and giant video screens in the shape of a cross. Waters guitarist Jonathan Wilson has explained why Waters' tour differs from those of fellow older classic rockers. Quote, "Even the Stones or members of the Beatles, it's more of a trip down memory lane than it is a current show. The activism, that's sort of the key to the whole thing." As a longtime fan of Waters' music who doesn't always agree with his messaging, I wanted to ask him about his mix of performing and preaching. Things got a bit animated. So here's the quote, as I understand, that begins the show.
If you're one of those, I love Pink Floyd, but I can't stand Roger's politics, people, you might do well to f*** off to the bar.
You might do well to F off to the bar right now. At the outset of the show?
Yeah.
Because
it's a really good way to start the show. But apart from anything else, it sets a few things straight.
Namely?
Also it encourages a lot of the people who have come to the show Because they have listened to everything I've written since, 1965 or whenever I started writing songs. So they do know what my politics are, and they do understand where my heart is, and they understand sort of why I'm there. But maybe it also gives a message to people who don't want to be there, in which case them effing off to the bar is probably not a bad idea. Except that you never know, those people, if they sit in a community like my audience is on these shows of This Is Not a Drill on this tour, there is such a great feeling of communication in that room between me and the audience, and between us combined with all our brothers and sisters all over the rest of the world, irrespective of who they are, where they live, their ethnicity, their religion, their nationality, or anything else. Because if This Is Not a Drill has a message, it is that we have to communicate one with the other.
To the guy who says, shut the F up, play the hits, do you want him, as long as he doesn't shout it out, do you want him in the arena?
I don't not want him there, so long as he doesn't annoy the people who do understand what's going on in the arena. I'm happy for him to
But I'm
be
saying,
there.
like, do I have to buy in? Does a person in the crowd have to buy in to the message? I've always loved the music.
Right.
Some of the messages I can buy into, and some I can't.
I've only got one message. Two strangers passing in the street, by chance two passing glances meet, and I am you, and what I see is me. That is my message. And that was on Medal, which was in 1970. And basically, my message hasn't changed. I recognize your humanity, but I recognize all the Russians and the Chinese and the Ukrainians and the Yemenis and the Palestinians.
Are you an equal opportunity offender on this tour? Here's why I ask. I remember the last tour. Of course, I came and watched. Very much, about Trump. And in the current show, you've got a montage of war criminals, according to you, and a picture apparently of President Biden on the screen, and it says, just getting started. What's that all about?
President Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Well, he's fueling the fire in the Ukraine for a start. That is a huge crime. Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky, the president, to negotiate, obviating the need for this horrendous war that's killing.
You're blaming.
We don't know how many Ukrainians.
But you're blaming the party
Russians.
that got invaded. Come on, you've got it reversed.
That's any war. When did it start? What you need to do is look at the history, and you can say, well, it started on this day. You could say it started in 2008. Okay, this war is basically about the action and reaction of NATO pushing right up to the Russian border, which they promised they wouldn't do when Gorbachev negotiated the withdrawal of the USSR from the whole of Eastern Europe.
When you say this, then I have to say, what about our role as liberators? You of all people,
you have no role as liberators.
World War II. World War II. You
got into World War II because
Come on.
Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor. You were completely isolationist until that sad, that devastating,
I would argue we were
day
always going to get in, and that pushed us in. But thank God the United States got in, right? You lost your father in World War II. Thank God the United States.
But thank God the Russians had already won the bloody war almost by then. Don't forget, 23 million Russians died, protecting you and me from the Nazi menace.
Hey, and you would think the Russians would have learned their lesson from war and wouldn't have invaded Ukraine.
Well, you
Fair?
with all your reading, I would suggest to you, Michael, that you go away and read a bit more, and then try and figure out what the United States would do if the Chinese were putting nuclear-armed missiles into Mexico and Canada.
The Chinese are too busy encircling Taiwan as we speak, okay?
They're not encircling Taiwan. Taiwan is part of China. And that's been absolutely accepted by the whole of the international community since 1948. And if you don't know that, you're not reading enough. Go and read about it.
Okay. Did we solve anything here today?
No, well, yeah, we did. Well, I mean, no, we didn't. Because you're believing your propaganda, your side's propaganda.
You're defining it as
Taiwan,
propaganda.
you can't have a conversation about human rights, and you can't have a conversation about Taiwan without actually doing the reading.
Roger, if you're having a conversation about human rights, at the top of the list of offenders are the Chinese. Why is it always the Western world?
The top of your list.
Why is it
the
always
Chinese
the Western
didn't
world?
invade Iraq and kill 1 million people in 2003. In fact, as far as I can recall, hang on a minute, who have the Chinese invaded and murdered, slaughtered?
Their own.
Bollocks.
Okay.
That's absolute nonsense. Complete nonsense. You should go away and read, but read some proper.
Hey, my
literature.
problem is I spend too much time reading your liner notes, okay? Thank you for doing this.
Thank
I
you
appreciate
for
it.
talking to me.
All right.
It's always a
So, thoughts so far, Colin?
As the children say, Roger is based.
Yes. That he is. I would like a base from Roger Waters. I'm sure he's got a couple extra, but
On Pink Floyd.
no, I will not watch you again, sir. So, this article goes on to say, so in a dizzying and contentious CNN interview, did you feel like it was dizzying, Colin? I mean, I feel like my inner ear is fine.
I can understand if it was confusing for a shit lab.
Yes. Well, this is from The Blaze, so
it wasn't for me.
No, this is from The Blaze, so keep that in mind.
Right.
So focusing on world politics, Pink Floyd founder Roger Waters explained why he's calling President Joe Biden a war criminal as part of his current concert tour, and managed to declare that Taiwan is part of China, and even that Russia almost won World War II. I think he said specifically that they had almost won the bloody thing. Right. So, as readers of The Blaze know by now, Waters arguably has been more of a geopolitical pundit in recent years than a musician and performer. The bass player and songwriter behind iconic albums such as The Wall and Dark Side of the Moon previously targeted former President Donald Trump in Israel, but with his current This Is Not a Drill tour, Waters has taken issues with Biden. So, when CNN's Michael Smerconish recently asked Waters about his anti-Biden imagery at his concerts, Waters replied, well, he's fueling the war in Ukraine. For a start, that is a huge crime. Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky to negotiate, obviating the need for this horrific and horrendous war? So when Smerconish told Waters he's blaming the party who got invaded, come on, you've got it reversed. Waters shot back with the following to the CNN host, any war, when did it start? What you need to do is look at the history. You could say, well, it started on this day. You could say it started in 2008. The war is basically about the action and reaction of NATO pushing right up to the Russian border, which they promised they wouldn't do when Gorbachev negotiated the withdrawal of the USSR from the whole of Eastern Europe. Smerconish, is that how you pronounce his name, I think? I think that's what Ed Heller is trying to tell me, or making fun of his name, one of the two. Countered by asking Waters about the U.S.'s role as liberators, particularly during World War II. Waters wasn't having it. You got into World War II because of Pearl Harbor. You were completely isolationist until that devastating, awful day in 1941 that we knew it was coming. We've known for years that we knew about this, that it went all the way up the chain of command and we let it happen. I digress. Thank God the Russians had already won the bloody war almost by then. Don't forget 23 million Russians died protecting you and me from the Nazi menace. So, yeah, back and forth didn't let up.
I think with that, hold on, pause there. Because here's the thing with that, though. I don't think in my history books and talking about World War II, it was ever mentioned in that way.
No. No, not until like people have to go watch stuff and find out afterwards. Stalingrad and
right, but that's what I'm saying. That fact is not taught in school.
No,
it's always kind of taught about it was America who won it.
Yes,
You know,
Yeah.
it's all, and so you could see it with Smerconish basically being like, and that makes sense given like his "Oh, Americas, we are the liberators" type of like you can see where that comes from based on the propaganda that we've kind of been spoon fed,
Yeah.
you know, in our education system, especially about World War II in this country, you know, that he's kind of, and I'm sure he had his talking points, but he wasn't necessarily like, no, talking points aside, he was probably raised with that idea that it was Americans who helped win World War II, and it wasn't necessarily that Russians did their part.
Well, and leave the guy from the UK to be like, hey, no, we were dealing with it a lot long. You know, you guys didn't help that much. You know, like that's the way they feel about it. That's, you know, it's like. Yeah, the Russians were the one who did everything because they had a massive amount of manpower and a gigantic landmass, and it was, you know, hard for Germany to do what they did towards there, you know. So, and the Russians ended up pushing them almost all the way to like, we cut everything off at the Black Forest. Like, that's what we were there to do, you know, like push them towards Russia. We were the, you know, like the flush dogs, getting them out of the brush. That's all they wanted. You know, the Russians did the rest. We just snagged a few Nazi scientists before they did it. But, you know, we forget about that. But the back and forth didn't let up, as Smerconish argued that you would think that the Russians would have learned their lesson from war and would have invaded Ukraine. Wouldn't have invaded Ukraine. With that, Waters told the host, who was chuckling by this point, I would suggest you, Michael, go away and read a bit more, and then try to figure out what the United States would do if the Chinese were putting nuclear-armed missiles into Mexico and Canada. Like, the Chinese are too busy encircling Taiwan as we speak, okay? Smerconish chirped back at Waters. They're not encircling Taiwan. Taiwan is part of China, and that's been absolutely accepted by the whole of the international community since 1948. Waters hollered at the host, and if you don't know that, you're not reading enough. Go and read about it. You're believing your propaganda, your side's propaganda. You can't have a conversation about human rights, and you can't have a conversation about Taiwan without actually doing the reading. Then it was Smerconish's turn to get testy. Roger, if you're having a conversation about human rights, at the top of the list of offenders are the Chinese. Why is it always the Western world? The Chinese didn't invade Iraq and kill 1 million people in 2003, Waters interrupted and soon wondered, who have the Chinese invaded and murdered and slaughtered? Their own, Smerconish replied, presumably in reference to the Uyghurs, although Smerconish didn't clarify that in the moment, their own. Bollocks, that's absolute nonsense. Complete nonsense. You should go away and read. Waters shot back before the interview ended on a surprisingly friendly note. Friend of the show, Fiorella, wanted to put out that, you know, the title, If They Were Honest, right? Which fans abandoned Roger Waters after he branded Biden a war criminal over Ukraine. So this is the headline now from the Daily Mail, right? Roger Waters gained more fans after he unapologetically dropped truth bombs on a CNN interviewer who was regurgitating tired pro-war talking points, hugely exposing the West's false narrative on Ukraine, and mainstream media is in PR crisis mode, trying to save face. So this is from Shadowproof, and I think it was I think I saw Blumenthal talk about it first, and I think who's over at Shadowproof? I forget his specific name who did it. But I will find out. I'm sure Indy will tell me in a second. But Chris Legion, don't you know that most wars are ended by throwing more weapons and money at them? Yes, that's what I heard. I just brought this here because I wanted to point out that they edited the interview, right? Pretty
absolutely.
Heavily. So
of these wars that are destabilizing to everyone all around us.
So this is CNN's edit.
Are you an equal opportunity offender on this tour? Here's why I ask. I remember the last tour. Of course, I came and watched. Very much, about Trump. And in the current show, you've got a montage of war criminals, according to you, and a picture apparently of President Biden on the screen, and it says, "Just getting started." What's that all about?
President Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Well, he's fueling the fire in the Ukraine for a start. That is a huge crime. Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky, the president, to negotiate, obviating the need for this horrendous war that's killing?
You're blaming.
We don't know how many Ukrainians.
But you're blaming the
and
party
Russians.
that got invaded. Come on, you've got it reversed.
So, and here's the different.
An equal opportunity offender on this tour. Here's why I ask. I remember the last tour. Of course, I came and watched. Very much, about Trump. And in the current show, you've got a montage of war criminals, according to you, and a picture apparently of President Biden on the screen, and it says, "Just getting started." What's that all about?
President Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Well, he's fueling the fire in the Ukraine for a start. That is a huge crime. Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky, or whatever his name is, the president?
So did you notice what was missing? Like what they cut. So they cut like right here. Right? And then had his like question. But instead of like, well, Roger was talking about why don't they have Zelensky just capitulate to, you know what I mean? Like they could end the war that way. Like they completely remove that.
To negotiate and to explain why, when he stood on the platform of ratifying the Minsk agreements, which he did when he was elected by 73% of the Ukrainian population that was left able to vote. After that, somebody either whispered in his ear or he completely changed his mind about making peace in the Donbass and about solidifying the Minsk agreements and making peace with their Russian neighbors and obviating the need for this horrendous war that's killing.
You're blaming.
We don't know how many Ukrainians.
But you're blaming the
and
party
Russians.
that got invaded. Come on, you've got it reversed.
Yeah, so you could see what happened there. They made it look like Michael Smerconish was cutting in to redirect Roger so that he was less pro-Russia and to
Right. So
but not only that, like they cut out like the part where Roger gave more of an explanation.
Yeah.
That's
as
what
opposed to
was
just making a statement, right?
statement.
Yeah. So but yeah, that's that was it. I just thought people would be interested in seeing how CNN terribly edits their stuff to lie to you.
But you know what? It just reminds me of, what Jackson Hinkle is going through, right? Like with
yes,
the Rolling Stone debacle, like he's basically requested, Owen Higgins, for the interview that I guess they want to do for him for Rolling Stone, to email him. Now, I think in light, I think people are like, well, why can't you, what's wrong with doing a phone interview or doing one on camera or whatever?
Yeah,
that's the reason.
There can be issues. Yeah,
there can be issues.
Especially if he gets
video, you can video you can easily cut.
Email you have down in writing,
it's a lot easier to have shit down in writing that that's a little bit more solid versus, and you guys basically know this, especially being in social media, any visual you can cut and manipulate it to anything that you want. You know? So not saying I agree with necessarily the tactic that Jackson is doing with all of that, but I understand why.
Yeah.
Because, I think especially in this case, Owen is not necessarily a good faith actor here and is looking for a way to kind of smear Jackson just as far as his coverage on Ukraine.
Yeah.
So I kind of undermine his, channel, probably even more. So I can see it as Jackson's a way to kind of protect himself, which makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, I think this just kind of shows, like with Roger, like he actually knows his shit. He actually knows his history. And the fact that, obviously it's CNN. They're not like CNN, I think is kind of well known, to kind of make it kind of clickbaity, for people to kind of watch, and kind of see, So I think in a lot of ways, I think this is why for many of us in the space, we prefer live streams.
Yeah.
Only because like, especially if you see it live, it's raw, it's in the moment. Like, even with us, you can see like the tech issues that we go through. Like, like it's more authentic in that way because, like it's, live, So, but yeah, all that to say, like, I just found out that Roger's going to be performing in DC next week. I think I'm going to go to a show now.
Nice. We probably should like message Misty and be like, yo, I know you got like those backstage passes, Misty. Let's fucking hook Collin up with those,
Really?
I mean, dude, Rogers has got like them set up with like a booth in the front. Like, I'm sure if you just like had a table and some flyers for A, you could just, get right in. Yeah, like, yeah, we'll reach out to Misty and see if we can get some nepotism going. Anyway, tomorrow we have, I think Tara wants to do a quick stream at around like 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll see if she feels up for that. And then I think Noli has one at 4. Friday, I'm going to try to do a show. Hopefully I can get Steve Poikinen on the show. That should be interesting. He wants to yell about capitalism and its effect on psychedelics, which is very common of Steve, and I appreciate it when he dabbles, So
Power Nation tomorrow night.
Yes.
At what time?
Probably at around, I feel like Tommy does like 9, 8, something like that. But keep an eye out on Indie News' Twitter. If you go down in the description, look for that indienews.network. You can find all the links to the network's social accounts. And you can go to the little Meet the Member section and find all the links for all the INN members. And he says, go watch Uncle Palooza last night. 10 p.m. for Tommy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Saturdays, I'm not sure if any of us are doing anything for the network. I know Oz, of course, Roar Media will probably be doing something that Saturday night. But Sunday, how do we miss that? And Monday, Tara will probably have someone again. So,
and then we'll be back.
Yeah, Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. We should try and have a host next week.
Yeah, we should get some people. I've got some people in mind. I've got some stuff that I want to line up for that. So, we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I think that's it for us tonight, everyone. Yeah. As always, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
All right, guys. Have a great week.